Okay, let's learn a little more about SVG images. Um, this presentation still doesn't go into as much depth as you'll find in your textbook, which I suggest that you do read through. SVG of the newer image types, and it's not that new, but still it's got some really remarkable properties that mean that for certain kinds of images, not photographs, but for things that are more like logos, it can be really useful. So SVG basics, it stands for Scalable Vector Graphics. So already we see it's not like bitmap file types, it's a vector. So bitmap file types such as JPEG, PNG, GIF, they're made up of a grid of pixels. You can almost think of it like a physical thing, like a whole bunch of dots on a piece of paper, right? SVGs, though, are not made up of things that you have to go get, and they take up a certain amount of space. They're made up of instructions. The paths, it's really just made up of math, is what it is, right? Paths and shapes that the instructions for drawing those things. They are illustration-like images written in text. Think logos. Therefore, they can be resized without loss of quality. Think about that for a second. All bitmap images, we make them a certain size, we use them that size. As long as they get smaller than that, they don't lose quality, but you can't make them bigger than that size. So you often use, with photographs, you're forced into this, you have setups where you may have the same image, but you may have to put it on your website in 3 different sizes, depending on the different screen widths and how big you want it to be. And if it detects a certain screen width, maybe it has to go get one of a much smaller size because that will go a lot faster, and so on and so forth. In fact, the Images 3 exercise, you'll see how that works if you choose to do that extra credit, which is coming up. But with SVGs, it doesn't matter. You make it big, you make it small. First of all, it's really tiny file size to begin with because it's just instructions. It's not like a physical thing kind of that you've saved there. And you make it giant, and it's got the exact same quality as the original. They require less data or file size than bitmap images because they aren't text. You can style them with CSS. You can add animation to them. They can interact with them with JavaScript. Those things are beyond the scope of this course, but just know that they have those possibilities. So here is the code for an SVG. So you can see kind of how it's built. You don't be surprised to see that you have an SVG tag to begin with, and each one of these, this is just HTML tags, right? Right. So you open the SVG, you close the SVG. That's the same idea, right? And then inside here we've got these properties and attributes. Something equals quotation marks. Something equal to quotation marks. First, we tell it to use where to go get the thing, or the instructions, and then what the size of the area is, and then the actual object, and what color to fill it with, and a number of other things, including text you can put in there with a font family and a size, and then the actual word which is typed, and then and the text and SVG. And this is the image that this produces. A purple box with rounded edges and the word hello in yellow. Can we go back again and sort of see that? The word hello, yes. It's in yellow on this font in this size, yes. It's in a rectangle of this width and height with these X's and Y's are the curved edges on it. So you can kind of see where it comes from to get that. And actually, it's actually just that code. You put that code in your document, boom, you get it. Here's one of the, that's not a difficulty, but one of the issues, or one of the things you have to think about when you use SVGs is how are you going to use them? There are a number of ways to embed or link them. Each has advantages and disadvantages. The 2 simplest ways are to embed with a regular IMG element, where the SVG code has been saved in a separate file. And this way, it's kind of like using a link to an image. So it's IMG src again, it is, but what's inside this file called test.svg, which could be sitting right there, or if it's not, it needs a more complicated path. What's sitting in there is all that code that we just saw. On the other hand, you can just paste that code directly into your HTML. Some coders will write SVGs by hand. Actually, if you really get to know it, you can actually just type and imagine the image that you're making in your head and just write it out using like Notepad++ or brackets or whatever, right? Some use vector drawing tools. You may know already about a vector drawing tool. If you've done much work, illustration kind of work, using Adobe products, then you may have used Illustrator. Illustrator is a vector drawing tool. It's really like all Adobe programs. It's like a vast thing. It's got all kinds of amazing features, but it doesn't really do a very good job of making SVGs for the web. It's a bloated code, and it's got lots of extra stuff in it, so it's not really used. Typically, people use one of the free or low-cost SVG image editors like Inkscape, which is one. They're better for this job, for creating SVGs for the web. And there's lots of other programs like that. So you should take a look at them if you're interested. There's some learning curve. They do have some properties that are similar to Illustrator, but what they make, they're just made for making web SVGs, and they make really good ones that load really fast and work well. There's a lot more you can learn about SVGs in our textbook. The author has created more than a chapter of all this information, and you can go to W3 schools and learn about them too, as I showed you briefly in earlier instructions. Okay, so let's go ahead on to the exercise and take a look and see what we're going to do. And the exercise is here. Okay, so first, yes, this is unusual. I've given you a zip folder to download. So, and frankly, this exercise, there isn't much to it, okay? Although I do get to show you about downloading a zip folder and how you get the stuff out of a zip folder in case you haven't done that before. Then we will do these things. I will do them here, and then you'll be done. And there's not much there's really not much original work. You're just following these instructions directly, and I will perform them here too. So let's go ahead and take a look at the zip file. And here I am in a folder with lots of other stuff, and I've got the SVG file that is downloaded. Downloaded the same way you download anything from Moodle. And yes, you could just double click on it. And if this was a Windows, if you're working in Windows, you'll get something like this. In Mac, I'm not sure exactly what it'll look like, but it's a similar idea. You'll have the ability to extract it. You would select it and click on it, extract, and so on. I personally don't like using this method. I like to have more control over it. So if I do a right click on it, I can open with. And then I could choose some other program to try to open it, but I like to just open it with my Windows Explorer. So I'm actually just inside the zip folder now. I can see that. I just like to be able to copy what's there, go back, and then just paste it back where I was. Okay? All right, so now I have a folder called SVG zip, and you do too. So you're not having to make a project folder and everything for this. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at it. Here's our Black Goose bistro.html. As you can see in the background here to some degree, a little bit different one. I'm going to edit with Notepad++, and I don't want to reload it. No, get rid of that. I'm going to run this. Oops, let's close this up. No, excuse me, I got too many things open right now. Okay, and here we are. Okay, there we are. Good. So I'm going to run it, and you will recognize it. Here it is. It's just that old Black Goose file, right? Good. Okay, so that is, as you recall, a PNG. In fact, if I look in the folder, I will see that it is called blackgoose.png. PNG is a bitmap image type, right? So let's just take a look at, for purposes of practice, and say, what would happen if we made that image really big? And here we have the image, right? There's the image. And any place in here at the end, let's go ahead and do this. And you should do it along with me. Width equals quotation marks, and height equals quotation marks. All right. So here we're going to do something for demonstration purposes that you should never do. In the real world, or you wouldn't leave it this way, we're going to make this image much bigger than it really is by using the width and height attributes of the IMG. Let's make it, I think in the instructions they say 500, I'm going to make it like 700. Either way, something big. whoops, 700. And remember, actually with width and height, we don't have to put a unit in. It should know its pixels. I'm going to save it and run it. Okay, that is enormous now. And do you see anything else about it? See how it's gotten kind of fuzzy, kind of blurry? If you have trouble seeing it in this video, you should try it yourself and take a look. Yeah, that's the problem, right? When we take a bitmap image and when we make it bigger than it was made to be, it gets blurry. All right, let's take a look at something else now. Instead, let's go and take a look at in the this file called blackgoose.svg, and let's edit that. You edit with your code editor, I'm editing with mine. Whoa, what is this? Okay, this is what an SVG looks like. If it was just a rectangle or just a circle or something, or very simple images, as you've seen so far, it would be very simple. This is all the math that's involved in drawing that image. Okay, circle fill, different sizes, where to stop, where to go, do the color here, do the color there, add this gradient, so on, all that stuff. I'm going to select the whole thing. See, it starts in SVG and ends with SVG, the whole thing. It's really just HTML. See, it's all HTML. So I want to go back in here and I want to paste it over that IMG. Just to make it easier to see, I'm going to take that and I get rid of the IMG. I'm going to paste it in right there. That giant thing. Good. I'm going to save it and run it. Oops, and now the whole thing is, oh, that's right, I forgot to put a size on it. I'm going to screw up my demonstration. So the SVG begins with the H1, well, there's H1, there's the SVG. And before it could be anywhere in here, but we might as well put it right in here. Let's put width and height attributes. And we're going to do 200 pixels. Honestly, I don't know if it's necessary to put pixels in this case. In IMGs, we don't have to. Your textbook says you're supposed to for SVGs, though. Although it works without it, I believe. It may depend on the browser. So just to be safe, we can put it in. Width and height, 200 pixels. Okay. Save it. Run that. All right, so this looks just like that, right? There's the original one, and there's what we have now. It's practically the same thing. Oops, not that one, and that one. Okay, good. So this is the SVG version of that original image. So you can use an SVG just like a regular bitmap image. But the key point is, right, if I go now and I put, instead of 200, I put, like I did last time, I put 700 in there. Now it's big, like we did before, like that one, as big as that one, roughly. But it's not fuzzy like this one, it's nice and sharp and crisp. It doesn't matter how big you make it, SVG is always going to stay nice and sharp and crisp. Okay, so let's go back to 200, which was the original, or close to the original size. 200. And the other thing is, just take a look in here at these codes. And if you start to look through them, you can start to make sense of some of them. Certainly you can make sense of this color code. And you could see, you can actually go in and you can edit and play with these numbers and then save it and run it and then see what happens. That's one way to learn about how these things are put together. So if I change this to blue, just to see and save it, now all of a sudden I've got the blue circle on the outside. And I could change other colors to other things to practice with it and play with it and see how it worked. Okay, now we're going to move on to some icons that I have in another folder here. And here I'm back in my folder, and by looking at this icons folder, I'll see what I've got. Some SVG icons, like for little graphics that would be for social media. Okay, good. So I've got Facebook, GitHub, which we probably won't use, Instagram, and I'm going to use Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. That's one. So I got more than I need here. Okay, good. These are essentially images. Put in a little image file, except they're SVG type images. And we'll have to remember that they are in a folder called icons. All right, so here we go. Let's put them in the HTML first of all. I'm down here in this area called the footer. Okay, got this paragraph already made for you right here because they're images, so they should be inside a block. So let's do image img src equals quotation marks alt equals quotation marks. Okay, good. Each one of these, can you imagine the path? We have to go into the folder called icons / and then it's going to be something, but the first one will be twitter.svg, and then the alt text will be the name of the thing, whatever. So I'm actually just going to copy that whole thing. Whoa, no. Copy that whole thing. Paste it. Good. And I'm going to say the next one is going to be not Twitter, but Facebook. There was one called Facebook in there, and that's, of course, Facebook. And there was one called Instagram in there. The SVG. And here, just say that in the alt. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and let's just go ahead and save and run that, so you can see where we are now. And there they are, a Twitter, a Facebook, and Instagram icon down there. But of course they're enormous, right? They're really big. So we're going to both size them and add some other styling that's going to make sense. I did want you to see this is the other one of the other ways. First way was we just pasted the SVG instructions into HTML. Second is now we treat it like a separate file, like an image, and use an image img src to bring it onto the page. And now we can just style it with CSS, like we would normally do for an IMG. And I made a CSS area up here for you. It's in the footer, okay, and general footer stuff. Let's just do a little styling. I'll do it for you, and I'll talk about it as I go. I'm going to do a border. Border top. It's a shorthand code 1px solid, and I'm going to do a special color, which is going to be a hex color, hex 57B1D. C. Remember, I like to have those all caps, even though it doesn't really have to be. Text align, GN. We're going to center the text, and we're going to padding top, little space in the top, 1EM. So that'll take care of this, the text and stuff, kind of stuff in the footer. But what about the IMGs? Let's go ahead and give it a width 40 pixels. Height, oh, did you see that? I forgot this. By forgetting this semicolon, I could very well have disabled the code that came after this footer IMG. Height. And margin 0 and 0.5 EM, half an EM. So 0 top bottom, left right 0.5 EM. We're going to be getting lucky in a way with the centering, I believe, here with this. Let's take a look. I'm going to run it. Okay, so what do we got? The icons have a little bit of space between them. That's that half an EM. I could put more in there. They have now tiny width and height, and they are centered along with this text. How did that centering happen? Well, we just got kind of lucky. We could have centered that in a lot of ways. We could have centered it with a margin, follow it with left-right margin of auto, if I put another container around all three of them and center them together. We could have used a Flexbox. We could have made it a Flex container and centered it that way, right? That would have worked. On the other hand, we use text align center, and because those images went along with the text in that same container, they got centered at the same time. Now, what if I want to make those images links? Well, you can guess that, right? All I have to do is put an ahref around the image. Go down to this image, this first one, I put an ahref. Quotation marks. I close the A after it, right? Ooh, A. And then I'd have to put a link in here. I have to go find my Facebook link, but I'm not going to bother. I'm just going to put a hashtag in there. That's a dummy link. Dummy links, you can use a hashtag to make a dummy link. And I'm going to run it. And now if I hover over it, my cursor changes as if it was a link. And I could now I put a real link in there and click on there and go there. Okay, that is the end of the exercise. You've seen SVG social media links and how you icons, how you could use them, 2 ways to use SVGs, and also a way to edit SVGs, and so on.